If your tribe believed you brought death and decided to leave you to die in the desert, what would you choose, beg for mercy or walk away with pride? The Sonoran Desert stretched endlessly under the merciless Arizona sun in September 1883. Two figures stumbled across the burning sand, their lips cracked and bleeding, their skin scorched raw. Ayanna collapsed to her knees, her strength finally giving out. Tallulah caught her before she hit the ground. Ayanna's voice came out as barely a whisper. "My daughter." Tallulah held her friend upright, her own body trembling with exhaustion. "We have to survive. For them." The camera pulled back, revealing the vast emptiness surrounding them. Not a soul in sight. Just endless desert and the promise of death. But 6 months earlier, everything had been different. Spring 1883 brought warmth and life to the Mescalero Apache village nestled near the Superstition Mountains. The settlement hummed with activity. Children laughed as they chased each other between the lodges. Women worked together preparing meals, their voices rising in conversation and song, the scent of cooking fires mixed with the sweet smell of sage and juniper. Ayanna sat outside her lodge, 27 years old and radiant with contentment. Her daughter Kiona, just 5 years old, sat beside her, small fingers working carefully to weave a basket. The girl's tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, her dark eyes focused intently on the reeds in her hands. "Like this, Mama," Kiona held up her work pride shining in her face. Ayanna smiled, adjusting her daughter's grip gently. "Just like that little one, you learn fast." Takota emerged from the lodge, 32 years old and strong, his face lit with affection as he watched his wife and daughter. "She gets that from her mother. Clever hands, clever mind." Ayanna glanced up at her husband, warmth flooding through her chest. These moments felt like they would last forever. The three of them together, safe, loved, part of something larger than themselves. Not far away, Tallulah and her husband Neshoba prepared the evening meal together. At 25, Tallulah moved with quiet grace, her hands steady as she worked. Neshoba, 28 and gentle in all his ways, came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You are the best gift life ever gave me," he whispered against her hair. Tallulah leaned back into his embrace, closing her eyes. "And you are mine." This was happiness. This was home. They believed it would never end. They were wrong. 1 week later, tension gripped the village. A band of white raiders had attacked an Apache supply convoy 2 days' ride to the south. 3 men, dead supplies, stolen families left without food for the coming winter. The Council of Elders met through the night, their voices rising and falling in heated debate. By dawn, the decision was made. 15 warriors would ride out to track the raiders and deliver justice. Takota and Neshoba stood among them. The morning air hung heavy as the warriors prepared their horses and weapons. Families gathered to say goodbye, knowing that not all who left would return. War was always uncertain. Death rode alongside every warrior. Ayanna held Kiona in her arms as Takota checked his rifle one final time. The little girl had been crying, her face buried against her mother's neck. "Papa, don't go," Kiona pleaded, her voice muffled. Takota took his daughter from Ayanna's arms, holding her close. "I have to, little bird. Bad men hurt our people. We must make sure they cannot hurt anyone else." He kissed her forehead and handed her back to Ayanna. Then he took his wife's hand, squeezing it tight. Ayanna's voice shook. "You promise you'll come back?" Takota looked into her eyes, his expression serious. "I promise. For our daughter. For you. I will come home." Nearby, Neshoba embraced Tallulah, his forehead pressed against hers. "Wait for me." "Always," Tallulah whispered back. The warriors mounted their horses. The village watched in silence as they rode out, dust rising behind them in golden clouds. Ayanna held Kiona's small hand as they stood at the edge of the settlement, watching until the riders disappeared beyond the hills. 7 days passed, then 8. Then 9. No word came. No messenger returned. The village grew quiet with worry. Women went about their work with tight faces and anxious eyes. Children sensed the fear and played more quietly than usual. Ayanna asked Kiona the same question every morning. "When is Papa coming home?" She forced herself to smile to sound confident. "Soon, little one, very soon." But at night, alone in their lodge, Ayanna lay awake staring at the darkness. Cold fear coiled in her stomach. She had dreamed the night before the warriors left. In her dream she saw ravens circling over a canyon filled with blood. She had woken gasping, her heart pounding. Tallulah spent her days working mechanically, her hands busy but her mind elsewhere. She spoke little even to Ayanna. When their eyes met across the village, they saw the same terror reflected back. On the 10th night, hoofbeats thundered into the village. One rider. Just one. People rushed from their lodges, torches flaring to life. The warrior slumped over his horse, barely conscious. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandages wrapped around his chest and arm. 2 men caught him as he slid from the saddle. "Ambush!" he gasped out. "They were waiting. We never had a chance." The words that followed hit like physical blows. 12 warriors dead, bodies left in the canyon where they fell. Only 3 survivors managed to escape. Takota's name was among the dead, Neshoba's too. Ayanna heard someone screaming. It took her several seconds to realize the sound came from her own throat. Kiona clung to her legs, wailing, her small hands fisted in her mother's dress. The world spun and tilted. Nothing made sense. Nothing would ever make sense again. Across the crowd, Tallulah stood frozen. She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply stopped as if her body had forgotten how to move. Her eyes went blank, staring at something no one else could see. The village prepared for mourning. Bodies could not be retrieved, not with raiders still in the area, so they held the funeral rites without them. Families gathered to sing the death songs, to honor the fallen, to pray for their journey to the spirit world. Ayanna knelt beside the ceremonial fire, Kiona pressed against her side. Both of them wept until they had no tears left. The little girl kept asking when her father was coming home, unable to understand that he never would. Tallulah stood alone throughout the ceremony. She did not weep. She barely seemed to breathe. When people tried to comfort her, she did not respond. It was as if part of her had died in that canyon too. But something else was happening, something darker. As the mourning songs faded, whispers began. Ayanna heard them even through her grief. People pulled back slightly as she passed. Conversations stopped when she approached. Eyes followed her with a new expression. Not sympathy. Something colder. 3 days after the funeral, a child in the village fell ill with fever. The mother clutched her son and glared across the settlement at Ayanna and Tallulah. 2 widows in 1 month, the woman hissed to her neighbors. 2 widows and now this. It is a sign. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Other voices joined in. Bad fortune follows them. The spirits are angry. Death clings to them like a shadow. Chenoa, an older woman of 60 with kind eyes and weathered hands, tried to quiet the talk. She had helped raise both Ayanna and Tallulah, had celebrated at their weddings, had wept at their losses. But even Chenoa's voice could not stem the rising tide of fear. The council of elders met in private. 5 men, their faces grave, and their voices low. Chief among them was Nodin, 69 years old, and rigid in his adherence to tradition. He had led the village through drought and war, and he believed without question in the old ways. 2 widows, Nodin said, his voice like stone. 2 deaths so close together. The ancestors are displeased. Ahiga Younger, at 45, shifted uncomfortably. They have done nothing wrong. They are victims of tragedy, nothing more. The signs are clear, another elder insisted. The crops wither, children fall ill. Since these women lost their husbands, misfortune has plagued us. It was a drought year. The summer had been brutally hot and dry. But fear looks for patterns and grief looks for someone to blame. On the 18th day after the funeral, Ayanna and Tallulah were summoned before the council. They stood in the center of the circle of elders, the entire village gathered around them. Ayanna's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Kiona stood behind her, clinging to her mother's skirt, her small face confused and frightened. Nodin rose to his feet. His weathered face showed no mercy, no doubt, only cold certainty. Ayanna, Tallulah, you have brought misfortune upon this village. Your husbands died. Our crops fail. Our children sicken. The spirits have spoken. They do not accept you among us. Ayanna's voice shook. We have done nothing wrong. Please, my daughter needs me. The child is innocent, Nodin replied. She will be cared for by others, but you cannot remain. Tallulah finally spoke, her voice rough from days of silence. We have lived here our entire lives. We have harmed no one. What crime have we committed? You carry death with you. That is crime enough. Genoa stood up from her place among the women, her face twisted with anguish. This is wrong. They are our daughters, our sisters. We cannot abandon them. Her son Chaitan, 40 years old and terrified, grabbed his mother's arm and pulled her back down. Do you want our family cursed too? Mother, sit down. Ahiga stared at his hands, shame written across his features. But he said nothing. He would not stand against the others. Ayanna dropped to her knees, pulling Kiona close. Please, not my daughter. You cannot take her from me. Nodin's expression did not change. The decision is made. You will leave before sunset. The child stays. Tallulah stepped forward, her voice steady despite everything. If this is your justice, then we accept it. We will go. She reached down and helped Ayanna stand. The younger woman trembled violently, her arms wrapped around Kiona, unwilling to let go. The little girl sobbed against her mother's chest, sensing what was coming, even if she did not fully understand. Mama, don't leave me. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Ayanna's heart shattered into pieces. She held her daughter's face between her hands, memorizing every detail. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her cheek, the softness of her hair. Listen to me, my brave girl, Ayanna whispered in Apache, their language, their bond. Mama loves you more than the sky loves the stars, more than the earth loves the rain. I will always, always love you. Mama, please. Genoa came forward, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. She gently took Kiona from Ayanna's arms. The little girl fought, reaching for her mother, screaming. The sound cut through everyone present. Some looked away. Others hardened their expressions. Ayanna tried to follow, but Tallulah held her back. Don't make it worse, she whispered urgently. Let her remember you as strong. Genoa carried the struggling child away, murmuring soft words that could not possibly bring comfort. Kiona's cries echoed across the village long after she disappeared into Genoa's lodge. The ceremony of banishment began. The village gathered as the sun sank low toward the horizon. Ayanna and Tallulah stood alone in the center. Two women brought forward all their possessions, knives, food supplies, water containers, extra clothing, moccasins, everything that might help them survive. And then, systematically, it was all taken away. The knives, the food, the water, the blankets, even the shoes from their feet. They were left with only the clothes on their backs. Nothing else. No tools, no weapons, no mercy. Nodin spoke the words of banishment in the old tongue, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. He called upon the ancestors to witness. He declared these women no longer part of the people. He cast them out into the wilderness. Ayanna looked back one final time. Through the crowd she saw Kiona in Chenoa's arms, still crying, still reaching for her mother. Their eyes met across the distance. Ayanna pressed her hand to her heart, trying to send all her love across that terrible gap. Then Tallulah took her hand. Come, we go now. They turned and walked toward the desert as the sun touched the horizon. Behind them, the village fires began to glow in the gathering darkness. Ahead, only emptiness and the coming night. No one followed. No one called them back. The sound of Kiona's crying faded as they walked farther from everything they had ever known. Ayanna stumbled, nearly falling. Tallulah caught her and held her upright. "We have to keep moving, at least until we're far enough that they cannot see us break down." "I left my child," Ayanna whispered. "I left my baby." "You had no choice. If we fight, they will only hurt her to punish us. This way at least she lives." They walked until full darkness fell, then collapsed beneath an outcropping of rock. The desert night was bitterly cold. Without blankets, without fire, they huddled together for warmth. Above them, stars blazed in impossible numbers, beautiful and utterly indifferent to their suffering. Tallulah stared up at that endless sky. "We have to survive. If we die, they win. They get to believe we were cursed, that they were right to throw us away." Ayanna said nothing. She curled into herself, arms wrapped around her knees, and wept silently. Every part of her hurt. Her body ached from grief. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. But worst of all was the knowledge that somewhere behind them, Kiona was crying herself to sleep without her mother. In the distance a wolf howled. The sound was lonely and terrible. From far away, so far it might have been imagination, came the voice of a man neither of them had ever met. A man who at that very moment sat alone in his ranch house staring at a photograph of his dead wife and son. Morgan Reed had no idea that in 3 days he would find 2 women dying in the desert. He had no idea that saving them would change everything, that their survival would become bound to his, that together they would create something new from the ashes of everything they had lost. But fate works in strange ways, and sometimes the people we save end up saving us. As Ayanna and Tallulah lay shivering in the darkness, the first night of their exile stretching endlessly ahead, one thought kept them breathing. One single promise whispered between them in the cold. We will not let them be right about us. We will survive. The desert night pressed down on them like a physical weight. Tomorrow would bring heat and thirst and pain. Tomorrow would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But tomorrow was not here yet. For now they held on to each other. 2 women the world had decided were worthless. 2 women who would prove the world wrong. The stars turned overhead. The desert wind whispered across the sand. And somewhere in the darkness, their future was already taking shape. The first light of dawn came harsh and unforgiving. Ayanna woke to find her lips already cracked, her throat raw and burning. Beside her, Tallulah stirred, her face drawn with exhaustion. Neither had slept more than a few minutes at a time. The cold had been too brutal, the ground too hard, and the grief too heavy. They stood on shaking legs and looked around. In every direction the Sonoran desert stretched away in waves of sand and rock. Saguaro cacti stood like silent sentinels, their arms raised as if in warning. The morning sun climbed fast, and with it came the heat. "Which way?" Ayanna asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Tallulah studied the horizon. Mountains rose in the distance to the east, but they might have been days away. To the west, nothing but endless flatland and scrub brush. North and south looked equally desolate. "Away from the village," Tallulah finally said. "That's all that matters." They began walking. Each step sent jolts of pain through their bare feet. Sharp stones cut into their soles. Thorns from desert plants caught at their clothing and skin. Within an hour both women were bleeding from a dozen small wounds. The sun climbed higher, and higher still. By mid-morning the temperature had reached 100 degrees. By noon it would be closer to 115. The desert showed no mercy in September. This was the tail end of summer, when the land baked and everything living sought shade or died. They had no shade. They had no water. They had no hope of finding either. Ayanna thought of Kiona. Had her daughter slept? Was she eating? Did she understand why her mother had left her? The questions circled endlessly in Ayana's mind, each one a fresh wound. She stumbled and nearly fell. Tallulah caught her arm. "Stay with me. Don't think about what we left behind. Only think about the next step." "I can't stop thinking about her." "I know. But if you break down now, we both die. Is that what you want Kiona to believe? That her mother was too weak to survive?" The words were harsh, but they worked. Ayana straightened, wiping the tears from her face. The salt stung her cracked skin. She kept walking. Hours passed. The sun reached its peak and began its slow descent toward the western horizon. Still they walked. There was nothing else to do. Stopping meant giving up, and neither woman was ready for that. Not yet. As the sun lowered, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, they spotted a cluster of beryl cacti. Tallulah remembered her father's teachings from when she was a girl before he died in a hunting accident. He had shown her how to find water in the desert, how to read the land, how to survive when survival seemed impossible. "Wait here," Tallulah said. She found a sharp rock and approached the nearest cactus, carefully avoiding the long spines. With slow, deliberate movements, she carved into the tough outer skin. The cactus flesh inside was pale and fibrous. She scooped out a handful and squeezed. A few drops of moisture fell into her cupped palm. It was not much, barely enough to wet her tongue, but it was something. She repeated the process, gathering what little liquid she could. Then she brought it back to Ayana, holding out her hands. "Drink." Ayana bent and licked the moisture from Tallulah's palms. The taste was bitter and slightly acrid, but she had never tasted anything more precious. When she finished, Tallulah went back and gathered more for herself. It would not save them, but it might buy them another day. Night fell again. The temperature plummeted. They found a shallow depression in the ground and huddled together, sharing body heat. Above them, the stars wheeled across the sky in their ancient patterns. Ayana tried to find comfort in their constancy. The stars did not care about exile or grief or injustice. They simply existed, eternal and beautiful. "Tell me about Neshoba," Ayana said quietly. "I never asked you. What was your favorite thing about him?" Tallulah was silent for so long that Ayana thought she would not answer. Then in the darkness, her friend's voice came soft and broken. "He sang. Terribly. He had the worst voice I ever heard, but he sang anyway. At night when we lay together, he would sing the old songs. I would laugh and tell him to stop, but I never really meant it. I loved listening to him." Ayana felt fresh tears on her cheeks. Dakota sang too. He sang to Kiona every night before she slept, songs about rabbits and eagles and the changing seasons. She loved it. "Tell me one." So Ayana sang, her voice cracking and raw, the words of a children's song her husband used to sing. The melody was simple and sweet, completely at odds with their circumstances. But singing it made her feel closer to him, closer to Kiona. As if by keeping his song alive, she kept part of him alive too. When she finished, both women were crying, but somehow the tears felt cleansing, a release of some of the pressure building inside them. "We will survive this," Tallulah said. "Both of us. Together." "How can you be sure?" "Because giving up means they were right about us, and I refuse to give them that satisfaction." The second day dawned even hotter than the first. Their lips were split and bleeding. Their skin burned despite their darker complexion. Dehydration was setting in. Ayana's thoughts began to drift and scatter. She saw Kiona ahead of them on the trail, laughing and calling to her mother. Then she blinked, and the vision disappeared. "I'm seeing things," she admitted to Tallulah. "I know, so am I. Keep walking anyway." They stumbled on. The landscape began to blur. Time lost meaning. Was it noon? Was it afternoon? Ayana could not tell anymore. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Left, right, left, right. The rhythm became everything. Then Tallulah grabbed her arm, yanking her to a stop. A rattlesnake lay coiled directly in their path, its tail raised and buzzing that distinctive warning sound. The serpent's head tracked their movement, tongue flicking out to taste the air. One bite would kill them within hours, maybe sooner, given their weakened state. Ayanna froze. Her mind went blank with instinctive terror. But Tallulah moved with surprising speed. She bent and grabbed a rock the size of her fist. The snake began to uncoil, preparing to strike. Tallulah threw. The rock hit the ground inches from the snake's head. The creature flinched and slithered away rapidly, disappearing into a crack between two boulders. Both women stood trembling, hearts pounding. "That was close," Ayanna breathed. "Too close. We need to be more careful. Watch where you step." But being careful required energy and focus, and they had almost none left. The sun continued its relentless assault. Their shadows grew long as afternoon faded toward evening. They had been walking for nearly 2 full days with almost no water and no food. The human body can survive 3 days without water in moderate conditions. In desert heat, that window shrinks dramatically. They were running out of time. As the sun touched the horizon on the second day, they collapsed beneath a tall saguaro cactus. Its shadow provided minimal relief, but it was better than nothing. Neither woman had the strength to go farther. Ayanna lay on her back, staring up at the darkening sky. "I'm so tired." "I know. I don't think I can get up again." Tallulah rolled onto her side to face her friend. Her face was haggard, her eyes sunken. She looked like death itself. "You have to. One more night, then one more day. Just keep going." "Why? What's the point?" "The point is Kiona. The point is not letting them win. The point is proving that we are stronger than their fear and their superstition." Ayanna closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw her daughter's face, those bright, trusting eyes, that beautiful smile, the way Kiona laughed when Dakota tickled her, all the moments she might never see again. "If I die," Ayanna whispered, "will you tell her I loved her? If you somehow survive and I don't, will you go back and tell my daughter that I never stopped loving her?" "No. Because neither of us is dying. We both survive or we both die. That's the choice." The night was colder than before. They had no energy left to shiver. They simply lay together, breathing shallow and slow, their bodies shutting down to conserve what little resources remained. Ayanna felt herself drifting, not quite sleeping, not quite unconscious, somewhere in between. In that liminal space she dreamed. She stood in a green valley filled with flowers she had never seen. A river ran through it, clear and cold and beautiful. Dakota stood on the far bank, smiling at her. Kiona played at his feet, laughing and weaving flowers into chains. "Come to us," Dakota called. "The water is sweet. You can rest here." Ayanna took a step toward the river, then another. The water looked so inviting. She was so tired. It would be so easy to cross over and join them. But Tallulah's voice cut through the dream. "Don't you dare! Don't you dare leave me!" Ayanna opened her eyes. The valley vanished. She was back in the desert, dying beside her last friend. "I saw them, Dakota and Kiona. They wanted me to come. Kiona is not dead. She's alive and she needs you to be alive too. Stay with me, Ayanna. Please." The desperation in Tallulah's voice pulled Ayanna back from that edge. She focused on breathing, on the feeling of the hard ground beneath her, on the cold air filling her lungs, on being alive even if being alive hurt. Dawn of the third day came gray and hazy. Neither woman had slept. They had simply existed through the hours of darkness, clinging to consciousness by force of will alone. When the sun rose, they tried to stand. Ayanna made it to her hands and knees before her strength gave out. She collapsed back to the ground, her vision swimming with black spots. Tallulah managed to get to her feet, swaying dangerously. She looked around, desperate for any sign of help, but the desert remained empty and hostile. No water, no shelter, no hope. "I can't," Ayanna said. The words came out slurred, barely comprehensible. "I can't walk anymore." Tallulah knelt beside her. For the first time since their exile began, defeat showed on her face. They had fought so hard. They had endured so much. But the desert was going to win. They would die here, and their bones would bleach in the sun, and no one would ever know what became of them. "I'm sorry," Tallulah whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't save us." Ayanna reached out and took her friend's hand. Their grip was weak, but it was there. A connection. A refusal to die alone. Vultures began to circle overhead. The birds knew. They always knew. The sun climbed higher. The heat intensified. Ayanna felt herself slipping away again. This time she did not fight it. She let the darkness come, welcoming the end of pain and grief and struggle. She would see Dakota again. That thought brought comfort. In the distance a sound broke through her fading consciousness. Hoofbeats, rhythmic and steady, getting closer. Tallulah heard it too. She lifted her head, squinting against the sun's glare. A rider appeared on the horizon, moving at an easy pace. A single man on a dark horse. "Help!" Tallulah tried to call out, but her voice was gone, reduced to a croak that would not carry 10 feet, much less the distance to the rider. The horse stopped. The man dismounted and pulled a rifle from its scabbard. He approached cautiously, weapon ready. From his perspective, this could be an ambush. Apache raiders sometimes used women and children as bait to lure travelers into traps. But as he got closer, he saw the truth. 2 women Apache by their dress and features lying half dead in the shadow of a cactus. No weapons, no supplies, nothing but the clothes on their backs and desperation in their eyes. Morgan Reed was 36 years old. He had seen death many times in his life. During the war as a cavalry soldier, in the frontier towns where violence erupted over nothing, in his own home watching his wife and sons succumb to fever while he stood helpless. He knew what dying looked like. These women were dying. He holstered his rifle and pulled the canteen from his saddle. Kneeling beside Ayanna, he lifted her head gently and held the canteen to her lips. "Easy now, small sips. Don't gulp or you'll be sick." Water touched Ayanna's tongue. The sensation was so overwhelming she gasped and choked, but she swallowed, and then she reached for more. Morgan let her have another small sip before moving to Tallulah. Tallulah drank more carefully, her eyes never leaving the stranger's face, trying to read him, trying to determine if he was salvation or just a different kind of danger. "What are you doing out here?" Morgan asked. His voice was rough, the accent of someone raised in Texas. "No water, no supplies, no shoes. You didn't choose this." Ayanna managed to form words. "Tribe. Banished. We are widows. They call us cursed." Morgan said nothing for a long moment. His weathered face showed no reaction. Then he stood and looked around at the empty desert. He could leave them, ride away and pretend he never saw anything. It would be the smart choice, the safe choice. Getting involved with exiled Apache women could bring trouble he did not need. But 3 years ago, when his wife Sarah and son Lucas were dying, he had begged the people of Tucson for help, for medicine, for a doctor, for anything. They had all refused, too afraid of the fever spreading, too concerned with their own safety to care about his family. He had watched them die slowly day by day, and he had been powerless to stop it. When it was over, when he buried them on the hillside behind his ranch, he made a promise. If he ever saw someone in need, truly in need, he would not turn away. He would not become the people who had turned away from him. "My name is Morgan Reed," he said. "I have a ranch about 3 hours' ride from here. It's not much, but it has water, food, and shelter. If you trust me, I'll take you there." Tallulah's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why would you help us?" "Because leaving you here is the same as murder, and I'm not a murderer." He helped Ayanna to her feet. She could barely stand, so he lifted her and set her on his horse. The animal shifted nervously at the unfamiliar scent, but held steady. Then he turned to Tallulah. "Can you walk?" Pride flashed in her eyes. "Yes." "Good. We move slowly. If you need to rest, tell me." They began the journey. Morgan led the horse, checking often to make sure Ayanna remained conscious. Tallulah walked beside them, her bare feet leaving bloody prints in the sand. But she did not complain, did not ask to ride. She simply endured as she had endured everything else. As they traveled, Morgan studied the two women. Both were young, maybe in their mid-20s. Both showed signs of once being healthy and strong, though now they were skeletal and weak. The taller one, the one walking, had eyes that missed nothing. She watched him, constantly wary and alert despite her exhaustion. The shorter one, the one on the horse, drifted in and out of awareness. When she was conscious, tears ran down her face. Grief poured off her in waves. He recognized it because he had lived it himself. The sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The temperature dropped slightly, offering minimal relief. They passed through a rocky area where desert scrub grew thicker. A jackrabbit bolted from cover and Morgan's horse shied slightly. He steadied it with a practiced hand. "Almost there," he said, though he was not certain they heard him. Finally, as the sun touched the horizon, the ranch came into view. It was modest, a sturdy log cabin with a covered porch, a barn and corral for the horses, a well with a bucket and rope, fencing in need of repair, but it was solid and real and safe. Morgan helped Ayanna down from the horse. She swayed, barely able to stand. Tallulah came to her side, immediately supporting her friend. "Inside," Morgan said. "Both of you. I'll tend the horse and then get you some food." He led them through the door into the cabin's single main room. Simple furniture, a table and chairs, a stone fireplace, shelves with supplies, and on one shelf, a framed photograph of a woman and a small boy. The glass was clean, carefully maintained. Loved. Ayanna saw it and looked at Morgan with new understanding. "Your family." "Yes, my wife Sarah and my son Lucas. They died 3 years ago. Fever took them both inside of a week." "I'm sorry." "So am I." He pulled out 2 chairs. "Sit. I'll be right back." When he returned from settling the horse, he found both women exactly where he left them, sitting motionless at the table. He filled 2 tin cups with water from a barrel and set them down. "Slow sips. Your bodies need to adjust." Then he built up the fire and set a pot of stew to warm. It was leftover from 2 days ago, venison and vegetables, simple but filling. While it heated, he dampened 2 cloths and handed them to the women. "For your faces and hands. You can clean up properly later, but this will help now." They took the cloths, silently wiping away layers of dust and dried blood. As the grime came off, Morgan could see them more clearly. Both had been beautiful once. They would be again given time and care. He ladled stew into 2 bowls and placed them on the table with spoons. "Eat slowly. Your stomachs won't handle much at first." Ayanna and Tallulah ate like people who had forgotten food existed. Despite his warning, they devoured the stew quickly, soaking up every drop with pieces of bread. When they finished, they looked up at him with something like hope beginning to show through the despair. "You can sleep in here," Morgan said, gesturing to the main room. "I'll bunk in the storage room. Door has a lock on the inside if you want to use it. You're safe here. I give you my word." Tallulah finally spoke again. "Why are you doing this?" Morgan leaned against the doorframe, his face thoughtful. "When my wife and son were sick, I begged for help. Nobody came. They were afraid of catching the fever. I understand that fear. But I watched them die, knowing that a little compassion, a little courage from my neighbors might have saved them." He paused, looking at the photograph on the shelf. "I made myself a promise. I would never turn away from someone in need. Not the way people turned away from me. You two needed help, so I helped. It's that simple." Ayanna felt tears welling again, but this time they were different. Not tears of grief, but of gratitude, of relief, of unexpected kindness in a world that had shown them only cruelty. "Thank you," she whispered. Morgan nodded and left them alone, closing the door to the storage room behind him. Ayanna and Tallulah sat in silence for a long moment, hardly believing their circumstances had changed so dramatically. "Do you think he means it?" Ayanna asked. That we're safe. I don't know, but we're alive. That's more than we had this morning. They spread blankets on the floor near the fireplace. The warmth was glorious after 3 freezing nights. The food sat heavy and satisfying in their bellies. For the first time since their exile began, they felt almost human. Ayanna curled onto her side, pulling the blanket close. Tallulah. Yes, we survived. Yes, we did. And then finally, mercifully, they slept. Outside, the desert night settled over the land. Stars emerged one by one, diamond bright against the black sky. Morgan Reed sat on his porch smoking his pipe, watching those same stars. He thought about the choice he had made. Taking in 2 exiled Apache women would complicate his life. People in Tucson might not understand, might cause trouble. But he had made a promise to himself 3 years ago, standing over 2 fresh graves. He would not break that promise now. Inside the cabin, Ayanna dreamed. But this time she did not dream of death or rivers to the afterlife. She dreamed of Kiona, her daughter, alive and growing, somewhere out there under these same stars. I will come back for you, Ayanna promised in her dream. I don't know how or when, but I will find a way. I am not cursed. I am your mother, and I will never stop fighting to be with you again. The fire crackled. The women slept. And outside in the darkness, fate continued its work, weaving threads that would bind these 3 broken souls into something stronger than any of them could have imagined. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, gentle and golden. Ayanna woke slowly, confused for a moment about where she was. Then memory returned. The exile, the desert, the stranger who saved them. She sat up carefully, her body aching in 1,000 places. Beside her, Tallulah still slept, her breathing deep and even for the first time in days. The smell of coffee and frying bacon drew Ayanna to her feet. Her legs trembled but held. She moved to the window and looked out at Morgan's ranch in full daylight. The land stretched away in all directions, brown and gold under the Arizona sun. Mountains rose purple in the distance. A few scraggly trees dotted the landscape. It was beautiful in its harsh way. The door to the storage room opened and Morgan emerged, already dressed for the day. He nodded to Ayanna, his manner neither warm nor cold, simply present. Coffee's ready. Food will be done in a minute. There's a basin and pitcher on the porch if you want to wash up first. Ayanna stepped outside. The morning air was cool and clean. She poured water into the basin and splashed it on her face, washing away the last remnants of desert grit. When she looked at her reflection in the water, she barely recognized herself. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, but alive. By the time she came back inside, Tallulah was awake, and Morgan had plates of food on the table. Eggs, bacon, fried potatoes, and thick slices of bread with butter. More food than Ayanna had seen in weeks, even before the exile. Eat what you can, Morgan said, pouring coffee into tin cups. Your bodies need it. They ate in silence, the only sound the scrape of forks on plates. Morgan watched them with the same careful assessment he might give to injured horses, evaluating their condition, determining what they would need. When the meal was finished, Morgan pushed back from the table. I need to tend the animals and check the fences. You two should rest more today. Your bodies have been through hell. Tomorrow, if you're feeling stronger, there's work to be done if you want to help. But no pressure. You can stay as long as you need. Tallulah spoke up, her voice still rough from days without water. We don't take charity. If we stay, we work. Fair enough, but give yourselves time to heal first. He left them alone in the cabin. Through the window they watched him walk to the barn, his movements efficient and practiced. A man who had lived alone for a long time and grown accustomed to it. Can we trust him? Ayanna asked quietly. Tallulah considered the question. I don't know, but we have nowhere else to go, and he hasn't hurt us yet. Yet. Yes, yet. They spent that first day doing very little, resting, drinking water, eating small amounts when Morgan brought food. He kept his distance, respecting their space, never pushing or demanding, just providing what they needed and then leaving them be. As the sun set, they gathered around the table for supper. Venison stew again with cornbread. Morgan poured coffee and sat down across from them. "I should know your names," he said, "if you're comfortable sharing them." Ayanna glanced at Tallulah, who nodded slightly. "I am Ayanna. This is Tallulah." "Good to meet you properly. I'm Morgan, but I said that already." He took a sip of coffee. "You don't have to tell me your story if you don't want to, but I'm curious how two women end up exiled without supplies or weapons." Ayanna felt the words rise up needing to be spoken. "Our husbands died in battle against raiders, within a week of each other. The tribe decided we brought bad fortune. That death followed us, so they cast us out." Morgan's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or anger on their behalf. "Your husbands die and the tribe blames you. That's a hell of a thing." "There's more," Ayanna continued, her voice breaking. "I have a daughter, 5 years old. They kept her, said I was not worthy to raise her." Now Morgan's face did change. His jaw tightened and his eyes went hard. "They took your child?" "Yes." For a long moment Morgan said nothing. He stared into his coffee cup as if it held answers. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "That's wrong. Plain wrong. I don't care what tradition says. Taking a child from her mother because of superstition is cruelty, nothing less." Tears spilled down Ayanna's cheeks. It was the first time anyone had validated her pain, the first time someone had said out loud that what happened to her was unjust. "Thank you," she whispered. Morgan stood and moved to the shelf, taking down the photograph of his wife and son. He looked at it for a long moment before speaking. Her name was Sarah. His name was Lucas. He was 3 years old when the fever took him. Sarah died 2 days later. I begged the people in Tucson to help, to bring a doctor, medicine, anything. They refused, said they didn't want the sickness spreading to town. He set the photograph down gently. "I buried them myself, dug the graves with my own hands. After that I couldn't stay in town anymore, couldn't look at those people without seeing their cowardice. So I came out here, built this place, lived alone." "Why tell us this?" Tallulah asked. "Because you need to know that I understand loss. I understand what it means when the world turns its back on you. And I understand that sometimes the only way to survive is to find new reasons to keep living." He returned to the table, sitting down heavily. "You can stay here as long as you want. No conditions, no expectations. This ranch needs work and I could use the help, but if you just want a safe place to heal, that's fine too." Ayanna wiped her eyes. "You barely know us. How can you offer so much?" "Because 3 years ago I needed someone to show me kindness and nobody did. I won't be that person. I won't turn away when someone needs help." The conversation drifted to quieter topics after that. Morgan told them about the ranch, how he had built most of it himself over the past 3 years, how he survived by hunting, trading in Tucson occasionally, and keeping to himself, how the isolation suited him most days, though sometimes the silence felt too heavy. Ayanna found herself relaxing slightly. Morgan's presence was steady and calm. He did not stare at them or make them uncomfortable. He simply existed alongside them, offering space without pressure. As night fell, Morgan excused himself to the storage room again. Ayanna and Tallulah prepared for bed by the fireplace, their bodies still exhausted despite a day of rest. "He's a good man," Ayanna said softly. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just lonely, and we're convenient company." "You don't believe that?" Tallulah sighed. "No, I don't. But I've learned not to trust too easily. Trust has to be earned. He saved our lives. That's a start. We'll see about the rest." The days began to find a rhythm. By the third morning, Ayanna and Tallulah felt strong enough to help with chores. Morgan showed them around the ranch properly, explaining what needed doing. The horses required feeding and grooming, the barn needed mucking out, fences had broken sections that needed repair. The vegetable garden behind the cabin was overgrown with weeds. Inside there was cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, and 100 other small tasks that accumulated when a man lived alone. Morgan divided the work without ordering them around. He simply said what needed doing and let them choose. Ayanna gravitated toward the animals immediately. She had always loved horses, and Morgan's 3 mares responded to her gentle touch. Within an hour she had them eating from her hand and allowing her to brush their coats. Morgan watched from the barn door, impressed despite himself. "You're good with them. My father taught me, before he died." "Well, they like you better than they like me, and I've had them for 2 years. Tallulah took to the physical labor of fence repair. She worked with quiet intensity, her movements efficient and purposeful. Morgan showed her how to use the tools, how to set posts and string wire properly. She learned quickly, asking few questions, but watching everything carefully. By midday, they gathered in the cabin for a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold meat. They ate quickly, then returned to work. The routine felt good, purposeful. It gave structure to days that might otherwise have been consumed by grief and worry. That evening, as they prepared supper together, Morgan noticed one of the horses acting strangely. The mare he called Juniper was off her feed, her flanks tight and uncomfortable. He tried to examine her, but she shied away, eyes rolling. "Something's wrong with her," he told Ayanna, "but I can't tell what." Ayanna approached the horse slowly, speaking in soft Apache, a crooning tone that seemed to bypass the mare's fear. She ran her hands over Juniper's body, checking for heat or swelling. Then she pressed gently on the horse's belly. Juniper groaned and shifted. "She has colic," Ayanna said with certainty. "Her stomach is blocked. Do you have sweetgrass and wild carrot root?" Morgan shook his head. "I don't even know what those look like." "I do. I need to find them. They're still light." She led Morgan out into the scrubland beyond the barn. Her eyes scanned the ground, reading the landscape in ways he could not. After 20 minutes of searching, she found what she needed. Long stalks of a grass he had never paid attention to, and the pale roots of a plant that looked like nothing special. Back at the barn, she crushed the plants together and mixed them with a little water to make a paste. Then she coaxed Juniper into eating it, her gentle hands and soothing voice convincing the mare to trust her. "Now we wait," Ayanna said. "It should work within a few hours." Morgan looked at her with new respect. "Where did you learn that?" "My grandmother was a medicine woman. She taught me about plants and healing. I watched her cure everything from snake bite to fever. That's a valuable skill. In my tribe I was supposed to become a healer, but then Dakota wanted to marry me and I chose that path instead. I still learned what I could, though. My grandmother made sure of it." They sat together on hay bales watching Juniper. Morgan found himself studying Ayanna in the lamplight. She was thin from their ordeal, her face still gaunt, but there was strength in her, intelligence in her eyes. She had been broken down but not broken. "Your daughter," Morgan said carefully. "Kiona, you said?" "Yes, Kiona. It means brown hills in our language." "She's lucky to have a mother like you." Ayanna's face crumpled. "She doesn't have me. They took her away." "For now. But exiles can end. Tribes change their minds. You'll see her again." "How can you know that?" "I don't. But I believe it. Because the alternative is too cruel even for this hard world." 2 hours later, Juniper's condition improved dramatically. The mare passed what had been blocking her system and began eating normally again. Morgan checked her thoroughly, relief evident on his face. "You saved her. She would have died without you." Ayanna stroked the horse's neck. "I'm glad I could help. You're more than just a guest here now. You're part of this place." The words hung between them, significant in ways neither fully acknowledged yet. But they both felt it. A shift. A connection forming. Over the following days the pattern continued. Work during the day, rest in the evening, slowly rebuilding strength and purpose. Tallulah proved herself capable with every task Morgan set before her. She learned to fix roof shingles, to chop wood efficiently, to handle tools with confidence. One afternoon, Morgan decided to teach both women to shoot. He set up targets behind the barn and brought out his rifles. "This is a Winchester repeating rifle," he explained, showing them the mechanism. 15 rounds lever action, good for hunting or defense. Out here you need to know how to use one. He demonstrated the proper stance, the way to sight down the barrel, how to account for distance and wind. Then he handed the rifle to Ayanna. She tried her best but missed the target completely 3 times in a row. Frustration colored her face. "I'm terrible at this." "You're terrible at it right now," Morgan corrected. "That doesn't mean you'll always be terrible. But honestly, not everyone needs to be a sharpshooter. You've got other skills that are just as valuable." He turned to Tallulah. "Want to try?" Tallulah took the rifle, settling it against her shoulder. She sighted down the barrel for a long moment, her breathing slow and steady. Then she fired. The bullet struck the target dead center 60 feet away. Morgan blinked. "Beginner's luck. Try again." She fired 5 more times. 4 shots hit the target. 3 of those were within inches of the bullseye. "That's not beginner's luck," Morgan said slowly. "You've shot before. My father taught me when I was young. He said a woman who could shoot was a woman who could protect herself. Your father was right." Morgan studied her with new appreciation. "And just for future reference, maybe don't make me angry." Tallulah smiled. It was the first real smile either woman had shown since arriving. Small and brief, but genuine. "I'll remember that." 3 weeks passed. The ranch work continued. The women grew stronger, their bodies recovering from the ordeal in the desert. They ate well, slept in warmth and safety, and slowly began to feel almost human again. But Ayanna thought about Kiona constantly. Every night before sleep, every morning upon waking. Was her daughter eating? Did she cry for her mother? Was Chenoa being kind to her? The questions had no answers, and the not knowing ate at Ayanna like acid. One evening, as they sat around the table after supper, she finally broke down. The tears came hard and bitter, unstoppable. Tallulah moved to comfort her, but Ayanna pushed her away, standing abruptly. "I can't do this anymore. I can't be here living in safety while my daughter thinks I abandoned her. She's 5 years old. She doesn't understand why I left. She probably thinks I don't love her anymore." Her voice rose to a wail. "She thinks I don't love her." Morgan let her cry. He did not try to offer empty comfort or tell her it would be okay. He simply waited until the storm of grief passed, and she sank back into her chair, exhausted. "You want to go back," he said. It was not a question. "I can't. They'll kill me, or worse, they'll let me see Kiona just long enough to break both our hearts again before sending me away." "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know. I just want my daughter back." Morgan leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Then we need a plan. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. If you want to see Kiona again, you'll need to be in a position of strength. That means getting healthy, learning skills, becoming valuable enough that your tribe regrets casting you out." "How do I do that?" "By not giving up, by surviving, by proving that you're not cursed or unlucky. You're just a mother who loves her child and had the misfortune to lose her husband." Tallulah spoke up. "He's right. If we go back now, weak and desperate, they'll just see confirmation of what they already believe. But if we return strong, with allies, with proof that we've thrived without them, maybe then they'll listen." Ayanna looked between them, hope warring with despair. "You think that could work?" "I think it's worth trying," Morgan said. "And in the meantime, you're safe here, both of you." The conversation turned to practical matters, what skills they could learn, how they might eventually make contact with someone from the tribe, whether there were sympathetic voices who might advocate for them. It was not much, but it was a plan, and having a plan made the grief slightly more bearable. October gave way to November. The weather cooled, the work continued. Morgan taught them more about running a ranch, about surviving in this harsh land. Ayanna expanded the herb garden, planting medicinal plants she knew would grow in this climate. Tallulah became proficient with multiple weapons, not just rifles but pistols, and even Morgan's old cavalry saber. They also began to talk more in the evenings, stories about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Morgan told them about his years as a soldier, about the battles he fought and the friends he lost, about meeting Sarah in San Antonio and knowing within a day that he would marry her, about Lucas's birth and the overwhelming love he felt holding his son for the first time. "I thought I knew what love was before that," he said quietly. "But I didn't. Not really. When you hold your child, everything changes. The whole world shifts. You understand what it means to have something worth dying for." Ayanna nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, exactly that." Tallulah listened to these exchanges with a strange mix of emotions. She and Neshoba had wanted children but had not yet been blessed. Now she never would be. That future had died with him in the canyon. Sometimes the loss of what might have been hurt almost as much as the loss of what was. But she also felt something else stirring, a sense of possibility, of new beginnings. She did not love Morgan, not romantically, but she respected him, trusted him, and the three of them were becoming something, not quite a family, but perhaps the beginning of one. One morning Tallulah woke before dawn and could not fall back asleep. She dressed quietly and slipped outside. The stars still blazed overhead, though the eastern horizon showed the first hints of light. She walked to the corral and leaned against the fence, watching the horses sleep, standing up. Morgan's voice came from behind her. "Couldn't sleep either." She turned. He stood on the porch, coffee cup in hand, his hair disheveled from sleep. "Too many thoughts." "I know that feeling." He came down and stood beside her at the fence. "Want to talk about it? I killed a man once, before I met you, when I was 17. Morgan waited, not interrupting. "A white trapper came through our territory. He tried to force himself on me when I was alone gathering firewood. I had my father's knife. I put it in his belly." Her voice remained steady, factual. "He died slowly. I watched the light go out of his eyes, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no horror. Just relief that he was dead and I was alive." "Did you tell anyone?" "My father. He helped me hide the body. Said the man got what he deserved and the tribe didn't need to know. But I've thought about it my whole life. What it says about me that I could kill without remorse." Morgan took a sip of coffee. "It says you're a survivor. That man made his choice when he attacked you. You made yours when you defended yourself. There's no shame in that. Sometimes I wonder if that's why Neshoba died. If I'm being punished for taking a life." "No." Morgan's voice was firm. "The world doesn't work that way. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. There's no cosmic balance sheet. Neshoba died because of violence and bad luck, not because of anything you did." Tallulah looked at him. "How can you be so sure? Because if punishment worked that way, I'd be dead 10 times over. I killed men in the war, more than I can count. If there was cosmic justice, Sarah and Lucas would still be alive, and I'd be the one in the ground." They stood in silence as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The horses stirred and whickered, ready for their morning feed. "Thank you," Tallulah said quietly. "For what?" "For not judging. For understanding." Morgan smiled slightly. "We're all carrying something. Might as well carry it together." The day proceeded normally after that. Work and meals and simple routine. But something had shifted between them. An understanding reached. They were 3 wounded people who had found each other by chance, and in that finding had begun to heal. Late that afternoon, while Ayanna was tending the garden and Tallulah was chopping wood, Morgan noticed riders on the horizon, 5 of them moving at a steady pace toward the ranch. His hand went instinctively to the rifle by the door. "We've got company," he called out. Both women stopped what they were doing. Tallulah set down the axe and moved toward the cabin. Ayanna joined them, her face worried. "Apache?" she asked. Morgan shook his head. "Wrong direction. These are coming from Tucson way, probably just travelers passing through. But stay inside until I see what they want." He stepped out onto the porch, rifle held casually but ready. The riders grew closer, and details became clear. White men, rough-looking. The kind who lived on the edges of civilization and liked it that way. The lead rider was tall and broad, with a scar running down his left cheek. He reined in his horse 20 feet from the porch. "Afternoon," the man said. His voice was gravelly, used to giving orders. "You Morgan Reed?" "I am. What can I do for you?" "Name's Frank Dalton. Heard in town you've got some Apache women staying here." Morgan's expression remained neutral. "Who I have staying on my land is my business." Frank grinned, but there was no humor in it. "Ordinarily I'd agree, but these particular women interest me. See, my brother was killed by Apache last year, ambushed while he was minding his own business. Sorry for your loss, but that's got nothing to do with me or my guests." "Doesn't it, though? Makes a man wonder what a white rancher's doing harboring Apache. Some folks might call that treason. Others might just call it stupid." Morgan's grip tightened on the rifle. "I'm going to say this once. You're on my property. I don't know you and I don't like your tone, so I'd appreciate it if you moved along." One of the other riders, younger and cockier, spoke up. "Or what, old man? There's 5 of us and 1 of you." Before Morgan could respond, the cabin door opened. Tallulah stepped out, the Winchester in her hands held with easy competence. She did not point it at anyone. Did not need to. The message was clear. "Actually," she said calmly, "there are 3 of us, and unlike you, we have cover." Frank Dalton's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. He had expected an easy intimidation, maybe a chance to rough up some Apache women and send a message. This was more complicated. "You teaching Indians to shoot white men, Reed. That's a hanging offense in some places. I'm teaching my guests to defend themselves, same as I'd teach anyone living under my roof. Now you've said your piece. Time to go." For a long moment, tension crackled in the air. Frank's hand drifted toward his pistol. Morgan's finger found the trigger of his rifle. Tallulah remained perfectly still, her eyes locked on Frank. Then Frank smiled again, cold and mean. "We'll be going. But you're making a mistake, Reed. Those women are cursed. They'll bring you nothing but trouble. Mark my words." He wheeled his horse around and the others followed. They rode off at a gallop, kicking up dust. Morgan and Tallulah stayed in position until the riders disappeared over a rise. "That was close," Tallulah said. "Too close. Frank Dalton's got a reputation. He's not the type to forget a slight." Ayanna emerged from the cabin, her face pale. "They'll come back." "Maybe. Probably. But not today." He turned to face them both, his expression grave. "This is what I was worried about. People in Tucson know you're here now. Some of them won't like it. Things might get harder before they get better." "Do you want us to leave?" Ayanna asked, her voice small. "Hell no. This is your home now if you want it to be, but you should know what you're in for." Tallulah checked the rifle's ammunition, her expression grim. "We've already been through hell. A few racist cowards don't scare me." Morgan nodded approvingly. "Good, because if they come back, we'll be ready." That night they ate dinner in a subdued mood. The encounter with Dalton had shattered their peaceful bubble. The real world was still out there with all its hatred and violence. They could not hide from it forever. But as the meal ended and they cleared the dishes, Ayanna felt something unexpected. Not fear, but determination. She had survived exile and the desert. She had found sanctuary and began to rebuild. She would not let men like Frank Dalton take that away. "Morgan," she said, "I want to learn to shoot, properly. Even if I'll never be as good as Tallulah, I want to be able to defend myself. We'll start tomorrow. And I want to learn other things too. Everything you can teach me about surviving out here. Because someday I'm going to see my daughter again. And when I do, I want to be strong enough that no one can take her from me twice." Morgan smiled. "Now that's the spirit. We'll make a fighter out of you yet." Tallulah raised her coffee cup. To survival, to strength, to not letting the bastards win. They all drank to that. 3 people who had lost everything now building something new from the ruins. It was not much. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Outside the desert, night fell dark and silent. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Somewhere out there, Kiona slept in another woman's arms, dreaming perhaps of her mother. And Ayanna, safe for now behind wooden walls with unexpected allies beside her, dreamed of the day they would be reunited. The journey was far from over. Danger still lurked. Challenges remained. But for the first time since exile, hope flickered in Ayanna's heart. Small and fragile, but real. She would survive. They all would. And someday, somehow, she would hold her daughter again. That promise kept her going, would keep her going through everything still to come. The fire crackled, the night deepened, and 3 wounded souls, slowly becoming a family, rested together in their sanctuary against the darkness. 3 weeks passed since Frank Dalton's visit. 3 weeks of watching the horizon, of jumping at unexpected sounds, of sleeping with weapons within reach. But nothing happened. No riders appeared. No threats materialized. The tension gradually eased, though it never fully disappeared. Morgan taught Ayanna to shoot every afternoon. She improved slowly, her natural coordination hampered by an instinctive hesitation to aim at living things. Even paper targets made her uncomfortable. But she persisted, understanding that squeamishness was a luxury she could no longer afford. "You're thinking too much," Morgan told her after another round of missed shots. "Your body knows what to do. Trust it." "My body wants to run away and hide." "Then teach it something different. You've survived worse than gunfire. You can learn this too." Tallulah practiced as well, though she needed little instruction. Her skills sharpened with repetition. She could hit a playing card at 50 feet, reload the Winchester in seconds, and transition smoothly between targets. Morgan had seen career soldiers with worse marksmanship. "Your father must have been one hell of a teacher," he remarked. "He said a woman who could shoot was worth 2 men who couldn't. He made sure I was worth 3. November's chill deepened. Frost appeared on the grass some mornings. The horses grew thicker coats. Morgan began preparing for winter, storing food and firewood, checking the cabin's insulation. Ayanna helped preserve vegetables from the garden and smoke meat from Morgan's hunting. Tallulah repaired the barn roof before snow could find its way through the gaps. They had fallen into a rhythm, the 3 of them. Not quite family, but something close. A unit bound by mutual need and growing respect. They worked together during the day and shared meals in the evening, conversations flowing more easily now. The silences between them were no longer uncomfortable but companionable. One morning Morgan announced he needed to go into Tucson for supplies. Winter was coming fast and they were low on flour, sugar, coffee, and ammunition, things they could not produce themselves. "I'll be gone most of the day," he said. "Maybe overnight if I get delayed. You 2 will be all right." Ayanna glanced at Tallulah, who nodded confidently. "We can handle things here." "Good. Keep the rifles loaded. If anyone comes around asking questions, you don't have to answer. This is private property. You have every right to tell them to leave." "What if they don't leave?" Ayanna asked. "Then you make them leave. But I don't think it'll come to that. Dalton's all talk. Men like him prefer easy targets." Morgan saddled his horse and loaded saddlebags with items to trade. Before mounting, he turned back to the women on the porch. "I mean it. You see trouble, don't hesitate. Fire a warning shot if you have to. I'll hear it and come running." "We'll be fine," Tallulah assured him. "Go. Get what we need." They watched him ride off toward the east, toward Tucson and civilization. When he disappeared over the rise, the ranch suddenly felt very empty. "Strange how quickly we've gotten used to having him around," Ayanna said. "He's a good man. Rare thing in this world." They set about their morning chores. Feeding the horses, collecting eggs from the chickens, Morgan kept tidying the cabin. normal mundane tasks, but both women felt an edge of anxiety they could not quite shake. Being alone again, even temporarily, reminded them of their vulnerability. Midday came and went. They ate a simple lunch of bread and cheese. The afternoon stretched long and quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds seemed subdued. Around 3 o'clock, Tallulah was chopping wood behind the barn when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses moving fast. She dropped the axe and ran toward the cabin, calling out, "Ayanna riders coming." Ayanna emerged from the cabin, a paring knife still in her hand from preparing vegetables. She dropped it and grabbed the Winchester from just inside the door. Tallulah arrived a moment later, breathless, and took the second rifle from its rack. "How many?" Ayanna asked, her voice tight. "4, maybe 5, coming from the west." "Not Morgan, then. He went east." They positioned themselves on the porch, rifles ready but not yet raised. No sense in starting a fight if one could be avoided. The riders crested the hill and came into clear view. Frank Dalton rode in front. His brother Cole flanked him on the left, a younger man with the same hard eyes and cruel mouth. 3 others Tallulah did not recognize completed the group, all armed, all watching the cabin with predatory interest. They reined in their horses 30 feet from the porch. Frank dismounted slowly, deliberately, making a show of his lack of fear. "Afternoon, ladies. Read around." "No." Tallulah answered, her voice level. "He's in town. Won't be back until tomorrow." "That's so convenient." Frank took a step closer. "We were just passing through. Thought we'd be neighborly. Check on you." "We don't need checking on. We're fine. You can go." Cole laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Hear that Frank the squaw says we can go, like she's got a say in things." Ayanna's hands tightened on the rifle, but she kept it lowered. Starting violence would only make things worse. These men wanted an excuse. She would not give them one. "This is private property," Tallulah said firmly. "You're trespassing. Leave now or we'll treat you as hostile." Frank spread his hands in mock innocence. "Hostile? We're just being friendly. Though I have to say it's mighty strange. 2 Apache women living with a white man. Makes a person wonder what kind of arrangement you've got going." The implication hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Ayanna felt heat rise to her face, shame and anger mixing together. But she held her ground. "What we do here is none of your business. For the last time, leave." "Or what?" Cole swung down from his horse, emboldened by his brother's confidence. "You gonna shoot us? I don't think so. Indians can't hit the broadside of a barn." "Want to test that theory?" Tallulah raised the Winchester smoothly, not quite pointing it at Cole, but close enough to make her meaning clear. The 3 other riders shifted nervously. This was not going the way they expected. They had thought to find 2 frightened women easy prey for intimidation. Instead, they faced armed resistance and steady nerves. Frank's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake, girl. We came here peaceful, but if you want trouble, we can provide plenty. All we want is for you to leave. And we will, eventually. But first I think we'll have a look around. Make sure Reed's not hiding anything he shouldn't. Maybe check that barn, or the cabin." He started walking toward the porch. Tallulah shifted her stance, bringing the rifle fully to bear on Frank's chest. "One more step and I shoot." Frank stopped. For a moment, genuine uncertainty crossed his face. Would she really do it? Could she? He studied her eyes and saw no fear there, no hesitation, just cold determination. "You shoot me, my boys will kill you both." "Maybe, but you'll still be dead. Is that worth it to you?" The standoff stretched. Seconds ticked by. Cole's hand drifted toward his pistol. One of the other riders cleared his throat nervously. Then Frank laughed, breaking the tension. "You got sand, I'll give you that. But this isn't over. You tell Reed when he gets back that he should choose his friends more careful. Apache blood has a way of staining everything it touches." He turned and walked back to his horse, mounting with exaggerated casualness. "Let's go, boys. These ladies need their rest." The 5 riders turned and left at a leisurely pace, refusing to show any sign of retreat. But they left. That was what mattered. Ayanna and Tallulah stood frozen on the porch until the riders disappeared from view. Then Ayanna's legs gave out, and she sat down hard, the rifle clattering beside her. "I thought they would attack." "So did I." Tallulah's hands trembled slightly as she lowered her weapon. "But Dalton's smart. He knows if something happens to us while Morgan's gone, he's the first person who'll be suspected. He was testing us, seeing if we'd break. And we didn't. No, we didn't." They sat together on the porch steps, adrenaline slowly draining away. The sun had begun its descent toward the mountains. In a few hours, darkness would fall, and they would be alone through the night. "Do you think they'll come back?" Ayanna asked. "Yes, but not tonight. Frank's not stupid. He'll wait. Plan something that gives him cover." "What do we do?" Tallulah looked at her friend. "We stay ready. We trust ourselves. And we don't let them see fear." That night, neither woman slept well. They took turns keeping watch, one resting while the other sat at the window with a rifle across her lap. Every sound made them tense. A coyote's howl, the wind rattling the shutters, a horse shifting in the barn. But nothing happened. Dawn came cold and gray. Morgan still had not returned. They went about morning chores with exhaustion dragging at them. Fed the animals, started a fire, made coffee. Normal tasks that felt surreal after the previous day's confrontation. Around noon, hoofbeats again. Both women grabbed weapons instinctively. But this time it was just one rider, and the silhouette was familiar. Morgan had returned. He rode up to the cabin and dismounted immediately, noticing their tension. "What happened?" Tallulah told him about Dalton's visit, leaving nothing out. Morgan's face grew progressively darker as she spoke. "He threatened you. On my land. While I was gone." "We handled it," Ayanna said quickly. "No one got hurt. This time. But he'll be back, and he'll bring more men. Or worse, he'll wait until you're vulnerable." Morgan paced, agitated. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have left you alone." "We're not children," Tallulah said sharply. "We can defend ourselves." "I know that. But 2 women against 5 armed men, those odds aren't good for anyone." He stopped pacing and looked at them both seriously. "Here's what's going to happen. From now on, we don't split up. If I go somewhere, you come with me. If you need to work away from the cabin, one of us stays within shouting distance. And we double our weapon training. All of us need to be able to fight if it comes to that." "You think it will?" Ayanna asked, though she already knew the answer. "Yeah, I do. Men like Frank Dalton don't make threats they don't intend to follow through on. He's coming back. Question is when and how." The days that followed were tense. They continued their routines, but with constant vigilance. Morgan set up an early warning system, stringing twine attached to bells around the perimeter of the ranch. Anything crossing those lines would trigger an alarm. He also taught them more advanced tactics: how to shoot from cover, how to reload quickly under pressure, how to assess multiple threats and prioritize targets. The lessons were practical and sobering. "I hope you never need this," he told them. "But hope isn't a strategy. Preparation is." Tallulah absorbed everything eagerly. She had a warrior's mindset, understanding that skill with weapons was about more than just pulling a trigger. It was about discipline, focus, and the willingness to do what was necessary. Ayanna struggled more. Not with the physical skills, but with the mental ones. She was a healer by nature, not a fighter. The idea of taking a life, even in self-defense, troubled her deeply. "I don't know if I can shoot someone," she admitted to Morgan one evening, "even if they're trying to hurt me." "You won't know until the moment comes, and I hope it never does. But if you have to choose between your life and theirs, I want you to choose yourself. You understand?" "I understand. But understanding and doing are different things." "They are, which is why we practice. So if the time comes, your body acts before your mind can hesitate." 2 weeks after Dalton's visit, the weather turned. A storm rolled in from the north, bringing sleet and freezing rain. The temperature plummeted. They huddled inside the cabin, keeping the fire burning high, venturing out only to tend the animals. On the second night of the storm, around 2 in the morning, the bells rang. All three of them jolted awake. Morgan was first to the window, peering out into the darkness. The storm made visibility nearly impossible, but he could see shapes moving. Multiple shapes. "They're here! Get ready!" Ayanna and Tallulah scrambled for their rifles. Morgan doused the lanterns, plunging the cabin into darkness except for the faint glow from the fireplace. They took positions at different windows, weapons ready. "How many?" Tallulah whispered. "Can't tell. At least 4. Maybe more." A voice called out from the darkness. Frank Dalton shouting over the wind. "Reed, we know you're in there. Come out and talk." Morgan did not answer. "We just want the Indians. Give them to us and we'll leave you be." Still no response. Morgan's mind raced. Dalton was smart enough not to attack directly. He was trying to provoke a reaction, force them into a mistake. "All right, Reed. Have it your way." A torch arced through the air, landing on the barn roof. The wet wood smoked but did not immediately catch fire. Another torch followed. Then another. The riders were trying to burn them out. "The horses!" Ayanna gasped. "I'll go," Tallulah said, already moving toward the door. "No!" Morgan grabbed her arm. "That's what they want, to separate us. We stay together." "But the animals will die." It was an impossible choice. Save the horses and risk getting shot, or stay safe and watch them burn. Morgan weighed the options in seconds. "Together then, all 3 of us. Tallulah, you lead. I'll cover. Ayanna, stay between us. Move fast and stay low. Ready." They nodded. Morgan threw open the door and they burst out into the storm. The freezing rain actually worked in their favor, continuing to dampen the flames. They ran for the barn, bullets kicking up mud around them. Tallulah reached the barn first and yanked the doors open. The horses inside were panicking, eyes rolling white with terror. She rushed in, speaking in soothing tones, trying to calm them enough to lead them out. Morgan fired into the darkness, aiming at muzzle flashes. He did not know if he hit anyone, but it forced the attackers to seek cover, bought them precious seconds. Ayanna helped Tallulah with the horses. One by one they led the terrified animals out the back of the barn, away from the gunfire. The last horse out was Juniper, the mare Ayanna had healed. The horse recognized her and followed without resistance. "Go!" Morgan shouted. "Get them to the corral behind the cabin." They ran through the storm, the horses thundering alongside them. More shots rang out. One came so close Ayanna felt the air displacement near her head. But then they were around the cabin, into the corral, relative safety. The shooting stopped. In the sudden silence they heard hoofbeats retreating. The attackers were leaving. Morgan checked the barn. The flames had not caught thanks to the storm. The structure was damaged but intact. He returned to find Ayanna and Tallulah trying to calm the horses. "Everyone all right?" "Yes," Ayanna said. "I think so. They shot at us." Tallulah's voice was flat, almost emotionless. "They actually tried to kill us. They tried to flush us out. If they'd wanted us dead, they would have just fired through the walls." This was intimidation. Morgan's face was grim. But next time they might not be so restrained. They spent the rest of the night huddled in the cabin, weapons ready, waiting for another attack that never came. As dawn broke over the storm-damaged ranch, the reality of their situation became undeniable. They were at war, and the next battle was inevitable. He studied the 2 women who had become his family, exhausted, frightened, but unbroken. He made a decision. "We can't just wait for them to come back. We need help. Tomorrow we're going into Tucson, all of us together. We're going to see the marshal." "Will he help?" Ayanna asked. "I don't know, but we have to try, because facing Frank Dalton alone is suicide. And I'll be damned if I let those men take you from this place." Outside, the storm began to clear. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the damage. Bullet holes in the barn, scorched wood where the torches had landed, evidence of violence that could not be ignored, but they had won. Against the odds, they had defended their home, and they would keep fighting whatever it took. The ride into Tucson took 3 hours. Morgan led the way on his bay gelding with Ayanna and Tallulah following on 2 of the mares. All 3 carried rifles across their saddles, and Morgan wore his pistol openly on his hip. They were not hiding anymore, not pretending everything was fine. The town appeared on the horizon just before noon. Tucson was small by most standards, maybe 500 souls, but it was the largest settlement for 50 miles in any direction. Adobe buildings lined a main street of packed dirt, a general store, a saloon, a church, a few other businesses, and at the end of the street a modest building with a sign that read, United States Marshal. People stopped to stare as they rode in. 3 riders, 2 of them clearly Apache women moving through town like they had every right to be there. Whispers followed them, a few hostile glares, but no one tried to stop them. They tied their horses outside the marshal's office and went inside. A man looked up from his desk, middle-aged, with iron-gray hair and tired eyes. James Thornton had been a lawman for 20 years, and it showed in the lines on his face. "Morgan Reed," he said, recognition in his voice. "Haven't seen you in a while. What brings you to town?" "Trouble, Marshal. The kind that needs official attention." Thornton's gaze shifted to Ayanna and Tallulah, assessing them quickly. "These the Apache women I've been hearing about? They're my guests, and they're being threatened by Frank Dalton and his men." The marshal leaned back in his chair, sighing. "Dalton, should have known. Tell me what happened." Morgan laid out the story. The first confrontation, the threats, the attack 2 nights ago. He spoke plainly without exaggeration, letting the facts speak for themselves. Thornton listened without interrupting. When Morgan finished, the marshal stood and moved to the window, looking out at the street. "Frank Dalton is bad news," he said finally. "His brother, too. They've been involved in 6 incidents I can't quite prove. Cattle rustling, claim jumping, a shooting last year that looked mighty suspicious. But without witnesses willing to testify, my hands are tied." "So you can't help us," Tallulah said bitterly. "I didn't say that." Thornton turned to face them. "What I said is I need proof, evidence, something more than your word against theirs." "They shot at us," Ayanna said. "Tried to burn down Morgan's barn." "Can you prove it was them? Did you see their faces in the dark in the storm?" Morgan's jaw tightened. "I know it was Dalton." "Knowing and proving are different things, Reed. You know that." Thornton moved back to his desk, sitting heavily. "Here's what I can do. I'll ride out to Dalton's place, ask some questions, let him know I'm watching. Maybe that'll make him think twice. And if it doesn't, then you defend yourselves same as anyone would. Just make sure when the shooting starts you've got right on your side. Because I promise you, if bodies start piling up, I'll be looking into it hard." They left the marshal's office with little satisfaction. Thornton meant well, but the law moved slowly. Justice required proof process time, none of which they had. As they walked toward their horses, a voice called out from across the street. An older man emerged from the general store, waving them over. He had kind eyes and white hair, and he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had seen 70 winters. "Morgan Reed," the man said warmly. "Thought that was you." "Sam Hutchinson. Good to see you." They shook hands. Sam's gaze moved to the 2 women, curious but not hostile. "And who are your companions?" Morgan made introductions. Sam nodded politely to each of them, no judgment in his expression. "I heard about the trouble you've been having," Sam said quietly. "Frank Dalton's been talking in the saloon, making threats, saying things that would make decent folks uncomfortable." Sam lowered his voice further. "There's talk about something else, too. A businessman from Santa Fe fellow named Boone. Been asking questions about Apache land near the Superstition Mountains. Some folks say the troubles those people been having might not all be natural." Morgan frowned. "What kind of troubles?" "Crops failing, water going bad, livestock dying. Could be the drought, but—" Sam shrugged. "Where there's money to be made, there's usually men willing to do ugly things." Morgan filed the name away. Boone. Something to remember. What kind of things? Morgan asked. That Apache women don't belong among civilized people. That anyone harboring them is a traitor. That something needs to be done about it. Sam shook his head. I've lived in this territory 40 years, seen a lot of hatred, but Frank's got something extra in him. Something mean. Can we count on you if things get worse? Sam hesitated, and in that hesitation Morgan saw the truth. Sam was a good man, but he was also old and cautious. He would not stand against Dalton openly. I'll do what I can, Sam said finally. But I'm not a fighter, Morgan. I'm just a shopkeeper. I understand. They talked a few minutes longer, Sam offering what encouragement he could. His wife Martha sent her regards and insisted they stop by if they ever needed supplies. Small kindnesses that meant more than grand gestures. As they prepared to leave Tucson, Tallulah noticed a man watching them from the saloon doorway, tall and lean with a deputy's badge pinned to his vest. He stared at them with open hostility, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. "Who is that?" Tallulah asked. Morgan followed her gaze. "Vernon Tucker, the deputy. He's been Frank Dalton's friend since they were boys. Don't trust him for a second." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, each of them lost in their own thoughts. The visit to town had accomplished little except to confirm what they already knew. They were on their own. The sun was setting as they arrived home. The damaged barn stood as a reminder of the attack. They tended the horses quickly and went inside exhausted from the long day. That evening they ate a simple meal of beans and cornbread. No one spoke much. The weight of their situation pressed down on all of them. Finally, Tallulah broke the silence. "We need to prepare for them to come back." "I know," Morgan said. "Not just prepare. We need to plan. Figure out how to defend this place properly, where to position ourselves, how to make them regret attacking." Morgan looked at her with new respect. "You've thought about this?" "All day. We have advantages if we use them right. We know the land. We have cover. They have to come to us, which means we can choose where to fight." Ayanna listened as they discussed tactics, firing positions, fields of fire, retreat routes if things went bad. It was like listening to a language she only partly understood, but she recognized the necessity. This was war, whether she wanted it or not. "What about me?" she asked quietly. "I'm still not a good shot. What do I do when they attack?" Morgan met her eyes. "You stay alive. You take cover, and if you get a clear shot, you take it. But mostly you survive. That's what matters." 3 days passed. 3 days of heightened tension and constant vigilance. They worked quickly during daylight fortifying the cabin. Morgan and Tallulah constructed firing ports in the walls, small openings that would allow them to shoot from inside while remaining protected. They stockpiled ammunition and water inside the cabin, prepared bandages and medical supplies in case of wounds. Ayanna tended the herb garden, gathering what she could before the first hard freeze killed everything. She prepared poultices and tinctures, the healing knowledge her grandmother had taught her. She did not want to use them, but she prepared them anyway. On the 4th night, exhaustion finally caught up with them. They had been running on fear and adrenaline for too long. Sleep became an overwhelming need. "We need rest," Morgan said. "Real rest. One of us on watch while the others sleep properly." "I'll take first watch," Tallulah volunteered. She sat by the window with the Winchester across her lap while Morgan and Ayanna lay down on their bedrolls. Within minutes both were deeply asleep. The hours passed slowly. Midnight came and went. The moon rose high and bright, casting silver light across the ranch. Tallulah fought to keep her eyes open, her body demanding sleep she would not allow. At 2 a.m, the bells rang. Tallulah was on her feet instantly, rifle raised. She moved to wake the others, but Morgan was already up, instinct pulling him from sleep. Ayanna woke more slowly, confusion giving way to fear as she realized what was happening. They took their positions at the windows, waited, watched. The attack came fast and hard. No warning shouts this time, no attempts at intimidation, just violence. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Bullets punched through the walls, sending splinters flying. One round passed inches from Morgan's head and embedded itself in the far wall. "They mean it this time," he shouted over the gunfire. "They're trying to kill us." More shots. The window near Tallulah shattered glass, spraying inward. She ducked, then rose and fired back 3 quick shots into the darkness. A scream suggested at least one found its mark. Then came the sound they all dreaded, the whoosh of flame. Someone had thrown another torch, and this time the conditions were dry enough for fire to catch. The barn began to burn. "Not again!" Ayanna cried, but this time they could not save the building. Going outside meant dying. They had to let it burn. The gunfire intensified. Morgan counted at least 6 different weapons firing. Maybe more. Dalton had brought everyone he could muster. "We can't hold them forever," Morgan said grimly. "They'll wait us out or burn us out." Then Tallulah saw movement. A figure running toward the cabin from the south side, something in his hands. She recognized the shape. Dynamite. "They're going to blow us up." She took aim, forcing herself to breathe slowly despite her racing heart. The running man was 50 feet away, then 40, then 30. She squeezed the trigger. The bullet caught him in the leg. He went down screaming, the dynamite flying from his hands. It hit the ground and rolled. For a terrifying second nothing happened. Then it exploded. The blast was deafening. The man who had been carrying it simply ceased to exist. 2 other attackers nearby were thrown backwards by the force. One did not get up. The gunfire stopped. In the sudden silence they heard shouting, panicked voices, the sound of horses being hastily mounted. The attackers were retreating. Morgan risked a look out the window. He saw riders fleeing into the darkness, 3 men slumped over their saddles, wounded or dead. The barn was fully engulfed, now flames reaching toward the sky. But they were alive. "Is it over?" Ayanna asked, her voice shaking. "For now." They stayed at their positions until dawn, not trusting the silence. When the sun finally rose, they surveyed the damage. The barn was gone, nothing left but smoldering ruins. The cabin was riddled with bullet holes. Bloodstains marked several spots in the yard where wounded men had fallen, and in one place a crater where the dynamite had exploded. But they had survived. Morgan walked the perimeter, checking for bodies. He found none. Dalton's men had taken their dead and wounded with them, but the blood trail told a story. They had hurt the attackers badly. "What now?" Tallulah asked. "Now we wait for the law to catch up. Because this time there's no denying what happened. Bodies don't lie." Ayanna stared at the ruins of the barn, tears streaming down her face. Not for the building, but for what it represented. The violence that kept finding them no matter how far they ran, the hatred that would not let them live in peace. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "So tired of fighting." Tallulah put an arm around her shoulders. "I know, but we're still here. We're still alive. That's what matters." Morgan joined them, his face grim but determined. "Listen to me, both of you. What happened here tonight was war, real war, and we won. That means something." "It means they'll come back harder next time," Ayanna said. "Maybe. Or maybe they've learned we're not easy targets, that we'll fight back, that we're worth more trouble than they want to deal with." He studied them both, exhaustion and fear written in every line of their faces. But also something else. Strength, resilience, the refusal to break. "You two are the toughest people I've ever met. You survived exile, survived the desert, and now you've survived a siege. Don't you dare give up now." Tallulah straightened her shoulders. "We're not giving up, we're just tired." "Then rest. I'll keep watch, and tomorrow we rebuild, because this is our home, and we're not letting anyone take it from us." As the sun climbed higher, warming the cold morning air, the 3 of them stood together among the ruins. Behind them, smoke still rose from the destroyed barn. Around them, evidence of violence and hatred. But they were still standing, bloodied but unbroken. and that Morgan knew was a kind of victory all its own. The storm had come. The devil had visited their door, but they had not yielded. Now they would see what came next. Together, Marshal Thornton arrived at the ranch 2 days after the attack. He rode up slowly, taking in the destruction. The burned barn, the bullet-riddled cabin, the crater where the dynamite had exploded. His weathered face remained impassive, but his eyes missed nothing. Morgan met him in the yard. Behind him, Ayanna and Tallulah watched from the porch rifles within easy reach. Trust came hard after what they had been through. "Reed," Thornton said, dismounting. "Got a report about gunfire and explosions out this way. Looks like the report was accurate. Frank Dalton and at least 6 men attacked us 3 nights ago. They tried to burn us out. When that didn't work, they tried to blow us up with dynamite." Thornton walked the perimeter, examining the blood stains, the bullet casings, the scorch marks. He spent a long time looking at the crater. Someone died here. One of Dalton's men, carrying dynamite, got shot before he could throw it. "You see who shot him?" Tallulah stepped forward from the porch. "I did." The marshal studied her for a moment. "That was some shooting. In the dark, under fire, moving target. Most men couldn't make that shot." "I'm not most men." A ghost of a smile crossed Thornton's face. "No, ma'am, you are not." He turned back to Morgan. "Here's the situation. Frank Dalton rode into town yesterday afternoon with 3 wounded men. Said they were attacked by Apache raiders. Filed a complaint claiming you're harboring hostiles." "That's a lie." "I know it is, because I also got reports from 2 ranchers to the east who heard the shooting. They said it came from your place, not from any raiding party. And Deputy Tucker let slip in the saloon that Dalton's boys were planning something out here." Morgan felt a surge of hope. "So you can arrest him?" "I can, and I will. But I need you 3 to come into town and give official statements, on the record. Are you willing to do that?" They looked at each other. Going into Tucson meant exposing themselves, making themselves vulnerable. But it also meant finally getting justice. "We'll come," Morgan said. "Good. Give me 2 days to get everything prepared. Then come in. I'll have Dalton and his men in custody by then." After Thornton left, they spent those 2 days repairing what they could. The barn was a total loss, but they salvaged some materials. The cabin's bullet holes were patched. They cleaned up the blood stains, buried the evidence of violence as best they could. On the morning of the 3rd day, they rode into Tucson. This time, the stares from townspeople felt different. Not just curiosity, but something else. News of the siege had spread. People knew what had happened, or at least fragments of it. The marshal's office was more crowded than before. Thornton stood behind his desk, and in chains against the wall sat Frank Dalton and his brother Cole. 3 other men, the wounded survivors, occupied the 2 cells in the back room. Frank's face twisted with rage when he saw them enter. "This is your fault, Reed, you and your Indian whores." "That's enough," Thornton said sharply. "One more word and I'll gag you." He gestured for Morgan, Ayanna, and Tallulah to sit. Then he took out paper and pen. "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." Morgan spoke first, detailing the threats, the confrontations, the attacks. His voice was steady, factual. When he finished, Thornton turned to the women. "Ladies, I need to hear from you too, in your own words." Ayanna spoke haltingly at first, then with growing confidence. She described the exile from her tribe, the days in the desert, Morgan's rescue, the harassment from Dalton, the fear that had colored every day since. Then Tallulah stood. She looked directly at Frank Dalton as she spoke. "You came to our home with guns and fire. You tried to kill us because you hate what we are. But we fought back, and we won. That man who died with the dynamite, I shot him. I'd do it again." The room was silent. Even Frank seemed taken aback by her directness. Thornton finished writing and set down his pen. "Based on these statements and the physical evidence, I'm charging Frank Dalton, Cole Dalton, and the others with attempted murder, arson, and destruction of property. They'll be tried here in Tucson." "When?" Morgan asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Judge comes through on circuit. Until then, they stay locked up. 3 weeks later, word reached the ranch. The judge had come. Frank Dalton and his men were sentenced to 15 years hard labor. Cole Dalton got 10. Deputy Tucker had been dismissed and left town in disgrace. Justice, slow as it was, had finally arrived. As they prepared to leave, Deputy Tucker entered. He took one look at the scene and his face flushed with anger. "Marshal, you can't be serious. Locking up white men on the word of Indians." "I'm locking up criminals on the weight of evidence, Tucker. And if you've got a problem with that, you can find yourself another job." Tucker glared at Ayanna and Tallulah with pure hatred, then stormed out. Thornton sighed. "Watch yourselves. Tucker's loyal to Dalton. He might try something stupid." They left the marshal's office and started toward their horses, but before they could mount, a small group approached from down the street. Sam Hutchinson led them, his wife Martha beside him. Behind them came 4 other townspeople, their faces serious but not hostile. "Morgan," Sam said, "we heard what happened, what Dalton did. We want you to know that not everyone in this town thinks like him." Martha stepped forward, addressing Ayanna and Tallulah directly. "You've been through terrible things, but you stood your ground. That takes courage." She held out a basket. "I made some food, bread and preserves. It's not much, but I wanted you to know you have friends here." Ayanna took the basket, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you." The other townspeople murmured agreement, offering their own words of support. It was not everyone. Most of Tucson still watched from a distance, uncertain and uncomfortable, but it was something, a crack in the wall of indifference. As they rode home, Ayanna felt lighter than she had in weeks. Justice was finally within reach. People had stood up for them. Maybe, just maybe, things would get better. They were a mile from the ranch when Tallulah saw riders ahead, 7 of them waiting on the trail. Her hand went to her rifle. "Morgan." He saw them too. But as they got closer, recognition dawned. These were not Dalton's men. These were Apache, and leading them was a face Ayanna knew well. Ahiga, one of the elders from her tribe. Beside him rode Chenoa, the old woman who had tried to defend them, and behind them others, including one small figure on a pony, Kiona. Ayanna's heart stopped. She kicked her horse forward, not caring about caution or safety. All she saw was her daughter. "Kiona." The little girl looked up. For a moment she did not react, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then recognition flooded her face. "Mama." Kiona slid from the pony and ran. Ayanna dismounted in a tumble of limbs and desperation, meeting her daughter halfway. They collided in an embrace that knocked them both to the ground. Ayanna wrapped her arms around Kiona and sobbed great heaving cries of relief and joy. "Mama, Mama, Mama." Kiona kept repeating, her small hands clutching at her mother's clothes as if afraid she might disappear again. "I'm here, little one. I'm here. I never stopped loving you. Never. Never, never." Morgan and Tallulah held back, giving them space, but Tallulah's eyes were wet, and Morgan had to look away to compose himself. After a long moment, Ahiga dismounted and approached. He looked older than when Ayanna last saw him, more worn. "Ayanna," he said quietly, "we have come to apologize, and to beg your forgiveness." Ayanna slowly stood, lifting Kiona into her arms. The girl wrapped her legs around her mother's waist and buried her face in Ayanna's neck. "Apologize for what, exiling us, taking my daughter, leaving us to die." Ahiga flinched, but did not look away. "Yes, all of that. We were wrong, blinded by fear and superstition." Chenoa stepped forward, tears on her weathered cheeks. "After you left, things got worse. The drought continued. More people died. We thought it proved we were right. But then Red Sky Walker, he is our wisest elder. He showed us the truth." "What truth?" "That white men were poisoning our water, killing our livestock, creating the disasters we blamed on you. They wanted our land, and they used our fear to divide us." Ahiga continued. Red Sky Walker caught them. 3 white men poisoning the stream that feeds our crops. They confessed they worked for a man named Boone, a man who wants to mine our land. The pieces clicked together in Ayanna's mind. Dalton worked for someone with money and ambition, someone who saw Apache land as nothing more than profit. "We were fools," Ahiga said, his voice breaking. "We cast out innocent women. We tore a child from her mother. We let hatred blind us to the truth." Tallulah had been silent, but now she spoke. Her voice was cold. "You did more than that. You sent us into the desert to die, without water, without food, without even shoes on our feet. We suffered for days because of you." "Yes," Chenoa sobbed. "We know. We cannot undo it. But we come now to ask you home, both of you, to restore your place in the tribe, to make right what we made wrong." Kiona lifted her head from Ayanna's shoulder. "Mama, are you coming home? Please." Ayanna looked down at her daughter's face, those eyes she had seen every night in her dreams, that face she had thought she might never see again. Everything in her wanted to say yes, to go back, to reclaim what had been stolen, but she looked at Tallulah, at Morgan, at the 2 people who had saved her life and given her a new one. "Kiona," she said gently, "I need to talk to these people. Can you wait with Grandmother Chenoa for a moment?" The girl nodded reluctantly. Chenoa took her hand, leading her a short distance away. Ayanna turned to Ahiga. "You want us to come home, to pretend the last months never happened." "Not pretend. We will acknowledge everything. We will honor you publicly, make reparations." "And what about tomorrow?" Tallulah asked. "When the next crisis comes, when fear whispers in your ears again, will you cast us out again?" Ahiga had no answer. Ayanna looked at Morgan. He had been quiet through all of this, respecting that it was not his place to speak. But she needed to hear from him. "What do you think?" Morgan chose his words carefully. "I think your daughter needs you, and I think your tribe is trying to make amends. Those are good things. But you have a home at the ranch, for as long as you want it. Both of you. That doesn't change regardless of what you decide." Ayanna turned back to Ahiga. "I need to think. This is not a small decision." "Of course. We will wait." She called Kiona back. The girl ran to her immediately, and Ayanna held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. "Kiona, I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, yes, Mama. I want to be with you always, but I need to decide some things first. Can you be patient with me?" Kiona's lower lip trembled. "Are you going to leave again?" "No, never again. I promise. But I need to figure out where we will live, where we will be safe." That night, back at the ranch, the 3 adults sat around the table. Kiona slept in Ayanna's arms, exhausted from the emotional day. They had allowed the Apache group to camp nearby, promising an answer in the morning. "What do you want to do?" Morgan asked quietly. Ayanna stroked Kiona's hair. "I want my daughter. That's all I've ever wanted." "Then take her. Go back to your tribe if that's what's right." "But what about you? What about Tallulah? You saved my life. You gave me a home when no one else would." Tallulah spoke up. "I'm not going back. I can't. They threw us away once. I won't give them the chance to do it again." So we split up. After everything. "No," Morgan said firmly. "Kiona stays here, with you. We expand the cabin, make room. She becomes part of this family." "The tribe won't accept that." "Then the tribe doesn't get a vote. Kiona is your daughter. You decide where she lives, not them." Ayanna looked at him, then at Tallulah. "You would do that? Take in a child who isn't yours?" "We're already a family," Tallulah said. "What's one more?" Morning came too soon. Ayanna walked out to meet the Apache group with Kiona's hand in hers. Morgan and Tallulah stood behind her, a united front. Ahiga stepped forward hopefully. You have decided. I have. I thank you for coming, for apologizing, for bringing my daughter to me. Those are not small things. But you will not return. No. I've built a new life here, with people who never turned their backs on me, people who fought for me, who would have died for me. I cannot leave them. Ahiga's face fell. Chenoa began to weep quietly. But Kiona will stay with me. Ayana continued. Here, at this ranch. She is my daughter, and where I go, she goes. The tribe needs to see her grow, to know she is cared for. Then visit. The door is always open to those who come in peace. But this is our home now. Ahiga looked at Morgan and Tallulah, then back to Ayana. Finally he nodded. I understand. It is not the answer we hoped for. But it is more than we deserve. He knelt before Kiona. Little one, be strong. Be brave like your mother. And know that your people will always love you. Kiona hugged him, then returned to Ayana's side. The Apache group mounted their horses. Before leaving, Chenoa approached and pressed something into Ayana's hand, a small beaded bracelet. I made this for her, so she remembers where she comes from. Thank you for everything you did for her while I was gone. I wish I had done more. I wish I had spoken louder. You did what you could. That's all any of us can do. The Apache rode away. Ayana, Tallulah, Morgan, and Kiona stood together watching them disappear over the hill. Are you sure? Morgan asked. Ayana looked at him, then at Tallulah, then down at her daughter. I'm sure. They tried to take everything from me, my husband, my daughter, my dignity. But they couldn't break me. And now I have something they never gave me. A family I chose, one built on loyalty, not blood. Tallulah put her arm around Ayana's shoulders. So what do we do now? We rebuild, the barn, our lives, everything. We make this place a home for all of us. Kiona tugged on her mother's hand. Mama, can I help with the horses? Uncle Morgan said I could learn. Ayana laughed, the sound bright and free. Yes, little one, you can help with everything. 6 months later, the ranch looked different. A new barn stood where the old one had burned. The cabin had been expanded with an additional room for Kiona. A small garden flourished behind the house, and one afternoon in late spring another woman arrived, a white woman with bruises on her face and fear in her eyes. Her name was Rebecca, and she had run from a husband who beat her. Tallulah opened the gate without hesitation. You're safe here. Come in. Morgan nodded his approval. Ayana brought water and food. Kiona, now 6 and growing confident, showed the woman to a bed where she could rest. They had become more than survivors. They had become sanctuary, a place where the broken could heal, where the lost could find home. That evening, as the sun set over the Arizona desert, the 5 of them sat together on the porch. Not a traditional family, not bound by blood or custom, but a family nonetheless. Ayana held Kiona close, watching the stars emerge one by one. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the pain and loss, the exile and desperation, the long walk through the desert that should have killed them. But they had survived, more than survived. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of everything they had lost. Tell me a story, Mama, Kiona asked sleepily. Ayana smiled. Once there were 2 women who were told they brought bad luck, that death followed them wherever they went. So they were sent into the desert to die. But they didn't die. No, they found a good man with a kind heart, and together they proved that family isn't about where you come from. It's about who stands beside you when the world tries to break you. Kiona yawned. I like that story. So do I, little one. So do I. The stars wheeled overhead, the desert wind whispered through the sage, and in a small ranch in the Arizona Territory, a family that should not have existed thrived against all odds. They had been broken, they had been cast out, they had been left to die. but they had chosen to live, to fight, to build something new. And that choice had made all the difference.